Hello, I welcome you all to another episode of Facing the Facts here on Daily TV. I am your guest, your host, Kingsley Sheteh Newuh, and I want to apologize for the late start. And each time we have a guest from Cameroon, sometimes we have to go through a lot of hoops and hurdles to be able to get over the challenges of internet connectivity, setting up our devices. But the most important thing is that we are here and we are going to have a very, very, very interesting session. Our guest this evening is a Cameroonian political leader who in 2011 challenged the political status quo by announcing her candidacy for the presidential elections and became the first woman ever to run for the presidency of the country. In 2018, she was arguably one of the most top-ranking politicians who requested for a boycott of the presidential elections. She is not just a politician. She is an entrepreneur and activist. And as an entrepreneur, she is internationally recognized for her expertise in leadership and management and her strong stance on Africa, her women, and her youth. She founded her consulting firm, Strategies, in 1995, and for the past 25 years has offered invaluable services nationally and internationally on leadership and strategic management while respecting the highest international standards. In 2008, she was featured by the World Bank among 7 women entrepreneurs working to improve the business environment in Africa. In 2011, Newsweek and the Daily Beast classed her as one of 150 women who shake the world. The same year, the New African magazine presented her as one of Africa's 100 most influential leaders. In 2014, she won the DVF Award in recognition and support for her role in helping women in Cameroon in particular and across Africa. In 2015, she received the Vital Voice Global Leadership Vanguard Award. That is quite a string of awards, and that tells you the caliber of the person we have today. So can you just join me in welcoming our guests on Facing the Facts today, Walla. Welcome to the show, Ma.
Thank you. It's a real pleasure to be back on Daily TV and very exciting to talk to Cameroonians in the diaspora and at home at this very, very crucial moment in the life of our country.
Thank you very much, Ma. We are going to be dealing with a number of things relating to both your political life, your business life, and your activism. So let's start with strategies. What was your inspiration when you started the consulting firm? If I'm not mistaken, you should have been about in your 20s when you started that.
Yes, I was in my 20s. I have always had a little bit of an entrepreneurial spirit. I've always been somebody who was more comfortable working for herself rather than having a job. I've had some interesting, wonderful jobs that I truly enjoyed. But I always felt that my mission was to create a company. So I created Strategies in 1995. We are 25 years old, as you mentioned. And I'm very happy to say we have fulfilled our dream, which was to build an African country, an African company run by Africans, but that could compete at global standards. We have done that because Strategies is a company that works on all 5 continents of the world. In 2017, we opened up our US branch. So a bit unusual that an African-owned company goes to open up a US branch, and have been doing quite well with our US office. So we are quite happy with the growth of the company. It has been an amazing adventure. We are 25 years old this year, and it's been very, very interesting and exciting exciting to work as a consulting firm, because we also work on African problems. We work on issues of peace and security. We work on issues of governance. When we get to politics, I'll talk to you a lot about political transition, but I am very, very fortunate in my professional life to be assisting other countries as they go through political transition. I just got back from Addis Ababa a couple of days ago, where my firm is working with the German cooperation to assist the Ethiopian government as they go through transition, and notably judicial reform in their country. So I think strategies it's my first baby. I always tell people it's my first baby, and it will always be very, very close to my heart. And it's a company that has helped me to understand the private sector in Africa, understand the developing world in Africa, work with African states at national, regional, and continental level. We do a lot of work with the African Union. And it has helped me to stay in touch with the global community, because we work in Germany, in France, and in the United States. So yeah, I think it's a nice place to work. I like working here, and I hear from most of the people who work here that it's a nice place to work. So I think we've built something special that we are very, very proud of as we celebrate 25 years.
Are you recruiting?
We actually are. We actually are. We always have a few positions that are up. I think right now we are recruiting people. Somebody in the communication department to help us out with our corporate communication. Yeah, we just finished the recruitment of another senior consultant. So yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm asking because never know the way you've described it. There may be many people who will be asking, "Whoa, maybe in the USA or other parts of the world who might be interested in coming to work there." So thank you for giving us that great overview of strategies. I mean, I like the name because it fits into a lot of things. Everything you do in life is about strategizing. So
exactly.
Yeah, let's talk about the most important thing for today. For me, it's the most important because it's actually happening. Let's talk about Women's Day. You know, on the 21st of February, you sent out a document titled "Women of Cameroon, Let Us Stand Up," signed by yourself, Madame Alice Nkom, Madame Michelle Doki, and Madame Charlotte Chakunte. Also, in a press conference yesterday, you and some women leaders called on all women to dress in black on Women's Day. That is tomorrow. Yeah. So why do you think women should not celebrate the day in Cameroon?
You know, I think we want to start off with what is Women's Day about. Women's Day is a day that other women, you know, fought really hard to get equal pay, to get their economic rights, and were able to win that fight, and therefore able to make their voices heard and get all of us recognized by the United Nations, who realize that there is such gender disparity in the world that we need a day dedicated to women. That's the origin of Women's Day. So Women's Day it's not a party, it's not a celebration. It is a commemoration of women fighting for their rights. And it's a day where women who are not in a comfortable position, who are not in a situation where they feel like things are going well for them in a society, should take advantage of that day to speak up. So we said this year in Cameroon, and we made our declaration 1 week exactly after the Ngarabu massacre. And we said, as Cameroonian women, we are really not fine. We are sick and tired of violence. We are sick and tired of war. We are sick and tired of being in a situation where we as women, we try very hard as Cameroonian women to take care of our children, carry out our economic activities, make sure everybody is healthy, make sure everybody is going to school. And we try so hard to do that. But the situation in our country today is such that the country would just not accompany us in those basic functions which are ours. And we find ourselves as women in the conflict zones. Women are what do you call it? Targets by both sides. They are targets. Women are being killed. They are being raped. They are being kidnapped and used as sex slaves. Their children are being killed. Women are not able to go to their farms and do their farming. So in all of this, we thought, especially 1 week after a pregnant woman had been killed and children less than 9 years old had been killed, we said, no, we are not going out to have a party. We are not going out to put on, you know, a cloth and parade with a state that seems as if it does not care for us as women. We are faced with a state that is not able to, outside of the zones of conflict, is not able to provide us water, is not able to provide us health care, is not able to provide us electricity. We give birth to children, we manage to educate those children. The state is not able to provide jobs for those children. So we said, no, you cannot put us in such dire straits for 364 days of the year. And then on one day you ask us to come and wear wrapper and we parade and we dance and we sing with you. No, we are not going to do that. So mind you, I've heard some people say we are boycotting Women's Day. Not at all. We are not boycotting the day at all. It is our day. The day belongs to us. It is a day for us to express what we are feeling. And that is what we are doing by asking women to wear black tomorrow, by asking women not to participate in the official ceremonies of the state, but to gather in our own ceremonies. For us here in Douala, we will be going to Mass. We will be going to the cathedral to say prayers and to pay tribute to all those who have died in all of these conflicts across our country. You know, our eyes are focused on the Northwest and Southwest, but the truth is that our country, 7 out of 10 regions in our country have direct effects of violent conflict. So we are in dire straits as women. We intend to let the country know. We intend to let the world know. And we are turning our eyes. We will not be in communion with the state. We will be in communion with our people. We will be in communion with our children. We will be in communion with our sisters who are in these conflict areas. We will be in communion with our sons whom this country has turned into people who are either killed or people who are killing. We are not okay with the fact that the only jobs that the country has created for our sons is to make them either into soldiers or into amber fighters. We are not okay with that. And so we are standing up tomorrow as women. And what I can tell you, Kingsley, we set out this program, the 4 of us, as you mentioned. Maitre Alice Com, who is from civil society, Maitre Charlotte Chakunte, also from civil society, Maitre Ndoki, whom, as you know, is from the CRM party, and myself. And it has been amazing already. We started the program yesterday. Yesterday, we had a press conference, a wonderful press conference. We had prayers at the mosque yesterday. The mosque in Newuh welcomed us. The Muslim community opened its doors to us, and we were able to commune with them. And then we moved from there to the Bonaberry Presbyterian Church today, and we had a ecumenical service, which was, I mean, it was just amazing. It gave us so much hope and so much strength for Cameroon. We were all together, people from extreme north, from northwest, from southwest, from all the regions in between. We were Muslims and Christians. We were Anglophones and Francophones, and all of us had the same demand. We want an end to violence. We want justice, and we want to arrive back at peace in our country. So you find that this Women's Day, we as women have taken the lead. We have taken the lead. We have stepped out front, and we are saying no more. No more.
Well, I mean, that is quite interesting, but we know how Cameroon operates, because this is not the first time you're organizing an event like this on Women's Day. So you would probably be familiar with the fact that those who work for the state are required, or should I say, they are mandated to actually celebrate. So it becomes something that they are forced to do. So what do you say to such women who, on a day that they are meant to express the freedom of women, they are subjected to do something that they ordinarily would not want to do? And if they don't do it, there are repercussions.
Thank you very much for that question. And you're right to point out, because last year we were already in black on Women's Day. We had already made that call. We are very, very excited in this 2020 because the response has been tremendous. Women have been joining, women have been contacting us, groups have been contacting us to find out what they do and how they organize themselves. So we are excited, and it goes to why it's important to start something, because you start, it may look like it's starting off slowly, but as you move along, you discover that more and more people are interested. And one of the groups, you are very right, who have contacted us are women who feel like they are obliged to wear this cloth. These are women who say, look, I work for the state, I work for a state-run company. Some of them even work for private sector companies, and they say that we are given the cloth and we are obliged to wear it. To these women, we say, no problem. Please be in solidarity with us with a bit of black. You can wear a black headscarf. You can wear a black scarf. You can wear a black armband. Please wear that black in solidarity and show that you are with the sisters who have lost homes, who have lost children, who have lost husbands, who don't know where to sleep today because of the situation of conflict. So we are asking these women, please join us with this small show of solidarity. And Kingsley, I want to say something else. Some women may not agree with us. Some women may decide, look, I want to wear my wrapper, I want to drink my beer, I want to souleve my Kahbang, as they say. This is a non-violent movement. This is a movement where we want to end violence. So please, do not in our name insult any woman, be aggressive to any woman, have any form of violence of any nature towards a woman because she has decided to wear her cloth. We are people who stand for democracy. We stand for a diversity of opinions. We will always engage that woman. If we see a woman who is not with us, we will engage her. We will discuss with her. We will try to convince her. But please, 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 no violence to anybody in any way, shape, or form in our name. We will not accept that.
Yeah, thank you. Now, yeah, well, all of this is obviously, I mean, everything is linked to politics. So we might try to separate them, but they're actually linked. So let's actually go into the heart of the politics. I mean, you've been in party politics. It says that you as far back as 1989, you were actively involved in politics as a student, and you finally joined the SDF officially in 2007. So my question is, as someone who advocates for change and as a leader, why did you not fight for reforms within the SDF when you disagreed with its strategies?
I did. I did fight for reforms within the SDF. I'm actually quite proud of my 3 years as an SDF member. During that time, I introduced reforms with regard to training of the grassroots. When I got into the party, I found that this grassroots party, because I think we must always give people who have worked before us credit for what they have done, even if we disagree with them at a certain point in time. The SDF was a true grassroots party. I learned grassroots politics from the SDF. And when I joined the party, I realized that grassroots work was no longer being done, and there was very little training for people at the base of the party. So I developed a training program. I tested the training program on my own, and I delivered this training program to the party. One of the other problems we had within the SDF was internal elections. The internal elections were, they had the same problems that we had in the general election with the CPDM. So I said, well, if we are applying for free and fair elections in the general elections, let us practice it here within the party before we go to general elections. And people who were from the Douala 1 district can tell you that Douala 1, we tested out electronic voter registration. We tested out a voter registration, a voting system that was very transparent, very, very well organized, and that stopped the kinds of I can say shenanigans that had been going on in the party. So all of these reforms were tried. Unfortunately, there was not a leadership at the head of the party who was willing to take on these reforms and really make them into a party-wide practice. And so I left the SDF because in 2010, we did not hold primaries, so we were not getting ready for the general election. I left them because in 2010, we were not busy registering voters and doing our grassroots work. And I left them because we did not hold, primaries. And I felt that all of these things showed that we were not preparing ourselves to win a general election. It is one thing to be a figure that you just go to an election to tick the box, but we were not preparing to win. And for me, I entered politics. The reason I entered politics, you mentioned I am an entrepreneur. I would not have entered politics if I did not feel compelled. I feel compelled that we must change the fundamental governance of this nation. And any movement that I am a part of must be about that.
Thank you so much, So are you the founder of the Cameroon People's Party, or you are just the president?
I am just the president. I'm not at all the founder. The Cameroon People's Party was founded in 1991 by a gentleman called Dr. Titafon, who then we met in 2011. He was very, very excited about the group because we were already at that time, the Walla campaign, we were a national movement at that time. He was very, very excited about us coming on board. We held a party congress in Bamenda, and I was elected president of the CPP.
Okay, yeah. So how relevant do you think that party is today in Cameroon scene, given that you've consistently boycotted? You boycotted in 2018, you boycotted now. What are the party members doing?
Wow, I think the party members are extremely busy. You know, it's very interesting. Since we came into the CPP, we have revolutionized Cameroonian politics. We revolutionized it in 2011 by the type of presidential campaign we ran, which had never been seen before in the country. And I believe today that the CPP is revolutionizing Cameroonian politics by demonstrating that when you are in a dictatorship, you do not want to be part of the system. Because once you join the system, you are aiding and abetting that system to stay in place. And people said to us, oh, if you boycott, if you leave your seat, your elected seats, you will become irrelevant. Well, guess what? We are one of the parties that sets the pace in Cameroonian politics. What we do and what we say determines the reaction on the part of government, and also very much influences what other opposition parties are doing. We have shown as a political party that you can put your personal political ambition on the back burner for a little while. We have not given up our ambition to rule the country, not at all. But we say there are preliminary steps. We have to get rid of this regime. That can never be done by one party alone. So we must join movements. That is why we and the other parties who are in Stand Up for Cameroon have come together as Stand Up for Cameroon to get rid of this regime and to have a political transition that enables us to put on the table issues such as the Anglophone problem, which is colonial heritage. But that colonial heritage is not only in the Anglophone problem. That colonial heritage is in our very definition of the nature of our state. It is in our very definition of how different portions of the state relate to citizens. You know, we are shocked by our armed forces, but actually we should not be shocked because these are colonial armed forces. These are armed forces that were left by the colonizer, and they have never been redesigned. Yep. Now, what is a colonial armed force? A colonial armed force is designed to protect the colonizer against the people. It is designed to protect the person in power against the citizens. We realize that the colonizer has gone. Nobody ever redesigned the armed forces. So to this date, the armed forces are protecting the people who are in power against the citizens, instead of the armed forces of a Republican democratic state who would be then protecting the citizens at all costs, even if this means protecting them against the person who is in power. So you see, we have so many colonial vestiges, and until we go through a political transition in our country, we will never be able to get the type of governance that is at the service of the people.
Yeah, so, we shall be coming to talk about political transition.
Yes.
On the issue of you said talks about setting the pace. Yes, when you advocated for a boycott of the presidential elections in 2018, there are a number of parties. For example, the CRM, party, the Cameroon Renaissance Movement, they went for the elections. At the time, there was already a conflict, which was the reason for the boycott in 2018. In 2020, the CRM have now advanced that reason. Do you think that is some sort of, they are beginning to understand more the gravity of the situation in the Northwest and Southwest region? And if so, why is it that the SDF doesn't seem to get it?
Honestly speaking, I will not want but to see is more and more parties boycotting, more and more parties realizing that the electoral strategy in a dictatorship is a losing strategy. We are not against elections, we are for elections. And it is because we are for elections that we refuse to participate in a masquerade, which you are calling elections. Now, I think that the SDF has made multiple strategic mistakes in the last 3 years. The SDF has made multiple strategic mistakes. It is very, very unfortunate. The SDF is a party that is close to my heart. I will never spit on the SDF, because it is the SDF that allowed me to enter politics and was the beginning of the path to where I am today. It is a party that has contributed enormously to the advances in democracy that we have had in Cameroon. We cannot neglect that, but it is evident today that the SDF is making gigantic strategic mistakes, which unfortunately are at the detriment of the people, and they are at the detriment of the SDF party itself.
So, I mean, would you consider yourself to be some sort of a political visionary and a trailblazer in Cameroon then?
I think we can say in all humility that yes, the CPP is definitely a trailblazer. This is the first party to present a woman candidate as the presidential candidate and to actually run an election with that woman candidate. The CPP is a party that has, blazed itself to the forefront of Cameroonian politics, despite the fact that we are led by a woman, we are led by very young people. The CPP is that party that you see most of the leaders are under 40 years old, who are at the head of the party. We do things very, very differently. The CPP is that party that does not only have Madame Walla as president, but a very visible Frank AC as the Secretary General, a very visible Benjamin Newuh as another Secretary General. So we are a party that moves as a team rather than around just one person. And we are a party that has dared to think strategically and to put that strategy on the table for Cameroonians and to say, look, this is the direction to go. We have done so when it is not so popular. I remember at the beginning of the Anglophone crisis, people said, well, it's not popular to be against secession, so why don't you just go with the secession flow? And we said, no, we do not see this as a strategic choice. We do not see this as a choice that truly represents who we are as Africans, because we were Africans before we were colonized. While that colonization is important and non-negligible in our history, it cannot be the sole thing that defines us. We said we think it makes political economic and cultural sense to seek solutions as Anglophones within the union. Popular at one point in time, and we paid very heavy prices for it. To kill me and get rewards for that. We stood by our principles. And we said boycott, it was unpopular. Today, people are realizing that they needed to boycott. So I can say that yes, we are very much strategic and in taking our time to educate the people, to empower the people. We don't believe that we are supposed to do it for the people. We believe that the people are supposed to do it for themselves, and that our job is to empower them so that we get to that point where the people stand up. For a long time, this was considered unpopular. We were wasting too much time. We were spending too much energy. But we realize today that many people have picked up our methods and are going along that same strategic line.
Yeah, well, recently, after a tour of Europe, Kamto arrived Cameroon and pulled out a crowd which the media was comparing to the Nijon Fundi movement of the 90s. So why do you think that with your strategies, which seem to be, they seem to be new, they seem to be fresh, they seem to, why does it not pull the people? What is stopping them? Do you think that your being a woman has a role to play, given that we are a very patriarchal society?
I think a couple of things. I think taking our time out, pulling a crowd in Cameroon is complicated than people. If you just want to pull the crowd, if you just want people to be excited and so on, it's less difficult than people imagine. Just yesterday, I believe, or day before, Mr. Chimi Ebuna, government delegate or former government delegate of Yaoundé, he lost his job as a government delegate, and he decided to do a demonstration of his power. And he pulled a crowd that, at least in the pictures, looks equal to, or maybe even more than the crowd pulled by CRM a few days Walla. So pulling a crowd is not as complicated as you may imagine. Pulling a crowd of militants willing to take political action is a completely different story. People who are willing to put themselves on the line for their political belief is a completely different story. And there I will tell you that if you look carefully, that the organization that has been able to carry out marches, demonstrations in this country, where nobody else thinks it is possible, like we did on the 7th Yaoundé, in part of Yaoundé, organization that has been able to do that, our platform is the CPP. So and now we are getting to a time when those crowds for demonstrations to show that they are unhappy are moving from hundreds to thousands. So we are very comfortable, extremely comfortable with the way that we are moving. We are not in a popularity contest. We are on the path to go and put an end to this regime. And we are very, very happy with the way things are progressing in this moment.
Yeah, you just mentioned the 7th of February march in Yaoundé. I did see your explanation for why you were not brutalized in Yaoundé, because I do follow you on Twitter, so I saw that explanation. But can you explain to people who are asking the question, how come that when other people protested, they were being, I mean, you know what happened to Michelle Ndoki on the 26th of January 2019, yes. They were being shot, but you were able to, in the heart of Yaoundé, pull that crowd. So what was strategic about that made sure that you could go out in Yaoundé and the regime was basically powerless to do anything?
First of all, you have to understand that Stand Up for Cameroon, we have been doing non-violent protests in this country since 2016. The CPP, we have been doing non-violent protests since 2011. So we have amassed quite a bit of experience, and we have learned a number of things. One of the reasons why in our protests, you would rarely hear us announce a protest in advance, because living in a repressive country, when you announce your protest in advance, you are giving your oppressors time to organize oppression. So we have realized that when we succeed in protest is when we surprise the government and it does not have the time to mobilize itself and organize itself for repression. That is one of our key elements. That does not mean that we will not announce protests in the future, but it means that at this particular strategic point in time, we have decided to do things differently. This is something we have learned. In 2016, we were arrested, I think 7 or 8 times with regard to protests. We have been beaten, we have been water hosed. So we have had the experience of the repression. And today, we use a lot of strategic intelligence to protest, because we must protest. We must take our right to protest. It is our right. It is enshrined in our constitution, and we intend to exercise that right. Nobody can take it away from us. But if we can afford to, at this point in time, we would like to avoid arrests. We would like to avoid violence. We would like for our militants to leave to protest another day. So I will not go into more strategy than that, because we use a lot of strategic elements to be able to protest. What happened in Yaoundé, basically on the 7th of February, was that the government was completely surprised, and we organized our protest knowing very well how long it would take them to mobilize, and we decided to end the protest before they mobilized themselves. So by the time they came with all their repressive machinery. And here it is my opportunity to apologize to the people in the Komkana neighborhood and to thank them, because the other thing we are realizing is that Cameroonians are gradually moving towards this stage where they need everybody to be out, and where they are supporting those of us who are in front leading the fight. We would not have succeeded our protest if the population was against us. They were helpful to us. That is as much as I can say at this point in time.
Okay, yeah. Now this is something slightly different, because in 2015 you began a rights-based program to help in the fight against Boko Haram. Now based on what we now know today, when the protests started in the Northwest and Southwest region, the Cameroon government quickly called those who were involved in it terrorists. Issa Chiroma was quick to use the word terrorists. It's a word that the international community uses a lot. I mean, in Syria, we see the ones that the Americans support are freedom fighters, and those that they don't support are terrorists. And so with Boko Haram and with what we saw, the video of the women and children who were shot and called Boko Haram, do you think the Cameroon government has a strategy where it is giving a dog a bad name to shoot it?
Where it's giving, sorry, the last sentence?
It's an expression, give a dog a bad name so as to shoot it. So basically, I'm talking within the context now of the North, because this is one area where I grapple with. When we talk of Boko Haram, I'm yet to see like real activists. And sometimes I question, when I look at the young people in the Northwest and Southwest, like Mancho BBC, who started asking for this. And because we had social media to see what Mancho was doing, we could easily say, oh, he's not a terrorist. But what if the same thing was happening in the North and the government said terrorists and we all said, oh yeah, there are terrorists in the North? You get what I mean?
Yes. So thank you so much for that question. We went to the North in 2014 at the height of the violence, because we wanted to know. CPP has a very strong base in the extreme North, and they had been giving us reports since 2012, to be honest. And we were wondering what is really happening. So we decided to go to the ground, especially after the photo call massacre. Now, let there be no mistake. Boko Haram is active in the extreme north of Cameroon. They are based in Nigeria. They have been able to recruit in Cameroon, and they are most definitely a terrorist organization. There is no ambiguity about that. Now, that said, in fighting against Boko Haram, the Cameroonian government did what it usually does in many situations. With this army that we have already established, is an army of a colonial culture, of a colonial culture. So what they did when they went into the extreme north, which was very strange territory for them. Don't forget that Cameroonians, the Cameroonian army at that point in time had never fought a war, had never been involved in any kind of large-scale war. Before that, we had Bakassi, but Bakassi was something on a much, much smaller scale, and a lot less intense. So this was something new to them, and it was very poorly handled. It was poorly handled politically, because we must always keep in mind when we blame the armies of the government. So we had a regime that, one, acknowledged that there was a problem, did not acknowledge that there was a problem in time to solve the problem. So had this government acted at the time, it had intelligence, because we knew that Boko Haram was acting in our territory since about 2010. But the government's idea was that this is a Nigerian problem and we are not going to get involved, which is absolutely stupid. If your neighbor's house is burning, you better start looking for water. You don't sit there and say, this is my neighbor's problem, because you know that that fire is going to reach your side. So the government did not act in time. The government did not address the root causes, which when we went to the north, we found that leaders, religious leaders, administrative leaders, the religious leaders, both the Muslims and the Catholics, had been warning government for quite some time, had been telling government for quite some time that there are things happening here on the ground. That is the radicalization, because there was a radicalization of young people. But why are these young people being radicalized? Is the question to ask. And when you ask that question, you will discover it is because they don't have jobs. It is because they don't have access to basic services. It is because they do not have places that they feel are their political opinion. They can express their political opinion, and so they feel marginalized. That is why these young people are able to listen to extremists who are recruiting them. So the government went in, and in those early days of Boko Haram, they committed so many violations of human rights. They committed so many atrocities. It is unfortunate, as you say, sometimes I do feel that I wish Cameroonians would listen and pay attention, because we rang the bell so hard on Boko Haram, on the fight against Boko Haram. We came back from the north and we said, listen, yes, there is a terrorist force on the ground. Yes, there are people to be fought. But the way the army is fighting, it is taking everybody as a terrorist. And this is creating a lot of frustration on the ground, which then enables Boko Haram to recruit more people. So had we listened then, maybe some of the things happening in Northwest and Southwest would not have been happening now, because the tactics are exactly the same. The army was going in and burning villages. Women were telling us about being raped by the army. People were telling us about the army coming in. When they hear there is one Boko Haram fighter in the village, they come in and descend on the whole village, arrest all the men in the village, carry out all kinds of atrocities. And we said, this is not normal. You simply cannot treat human beings this way. And in the beginning of the fight against Boko Haram, this aggravated the Boko Haram situation, because more and more young men were frustrated. They would then get recruited by Boko Haram, who at that time was recruiting with money. We have to keep that in mind. Boko Haram was paying salary. So our children, to whom we had given no perspective, no future, no job, were tempted and ceded to that temptation of being recruited by Boko Haram. And the picture you just showed of the two women and their babies who were murdered in cold blood by our army. And we forget that at that same time that video came out, another video came out with about a dozen men who were put up against the wall of a house, and they were also murdered in cold blood. These are the things that were happening. Villages were being burnt at that time, and none of them are nobody paid attention. You know, I understand Anglophones in their frustration today. I understand them when they say nobody is, the other part of the country is not talking about what is happening here. But I also want to remind them that when we were saying Boko Haram, the fight against Boko Haram is violating human rights, women are being killed, young men are being killed, people are being arrested illegally, they are being tried. In the northern part of the country, a lot of people do not speak French. The lawyers found hundreds of young men who had been tried in a language they did not understand. The entire trial was carried out without an interpreter, without anybody being able to explain to them what they were actually doing in court. They were tried and sentenced. So these tactics which are being used on the Anglophone side today, they are not specific to Anglophones. They are not something new that we are seeing. They have been aggravated. They have reached a whole new level because for the first time there are also armed groups on the ground. So the government has scaled it to a whole new level. But these are not tactics that are new. If you go in Cameroonian history, you will find that at the time of independence, the government used these very same tactics.
Against the Maquisards. Yeah, well, there's a question, because I'll just be taking some of the questions so that we don't have to go forward and backwards. There's Maurice Ngong, who is asking if you're aware of any Boko Haram militants arrested by the Cameroon government and what their circumstances are. I think you've just basically talked about the young people who were tried.
Yes. Oh, there are horrible, horrible things that have happened. First of all, we don't know the exact number, but there are still young men who were illegally arrested in 2014, 2015, and they are still in jail. People who were 2014, 2015. Some of them are still in jail. There are Boko Haram militants who have been acquitted, who have actually gone to court and been told that no, this is a case of mistaken identity, this is a case of, and they are still in jail at this point where we are speaking. There was a point in time when the government arrested children from a Quranic school. They arrested children and kept them in jail for months. So, sometimes the ignorance of our own ignorance about what our government is doing is something that doesn't enable us to really understand what is going on. Yeah.
Wow, nice. I'm just also putting up some of the comments. Suli Mukasa is just yes, yeah. It's making a very valid contribution there. Yeah, so we have talked about local politics a lot, but let's look at how Cameroon relates to the rest of the world. I mean, to Africa. When we talk of Africa's relationship, we use Cameroon as an example. I mean, in 2014, while you were talking during TEDx Warwick on the topic "Daring to Invent the Future of Africa," you said there were a number of things that the rest of the world needed to stop doing. One of them was that they should stop ambiguous behavior with regards to dictators. So let us look at the whole crisis in Cameroon, and in particular over the last few years. I will just focus on the countries that are in the Security Council. So let's start with France. You have said recently that Macron's interaction with the leader of the Brigade Anti-Sadana, Calibro, breached diplomatic norms. So what, in your opinion, is France's current relationship with Biya? Is it ambiguous?
I don't think it's ambiguous. I don't think it's ambiguous. I think that the Western countries as a whole they are focused on their interests. We as Africans, we really need to understand this. Western countries, it's not on the basis of principle, it's not on the basis of democracy, it's not on the basis of because they like us. They conduct their business based on their interests. And France has been a long-time ally of the two governments that we have had in Cameroon. The women that sorry, not the women, the relationship that France has had with both the Ajijo and the Biya government was a very, very close relationship. And don't forget that it is this close relationship between Ajijo and France that enabled them to squash the nationalist movement in the 60s. The nationalist movement, whom, by the way, we have to mention here, had as its 3-point program, 1, reunification, They wanted reunification before independence. They said we need to sit down and talk about how we're going to live together as these two different parts of the country before we go to independence. It was a mistake not to follow that path very clearly. We see it today. So it is this alliance that squashed the nationalists at the time, the alliance between the French and Ahijo at the time. The Biya government is just an outgrowth of the Biya regime, is an outgrowth of the Ahijo regime. This relationship has remained very close, with France having a lot of economic interest in Cameroon for a very, very long time. However, it's important to note that those economic interests have diminished significantly over the last 20 years. France no longer is producing oil in Cameroon. We used to have 4 or 5 big French companies, Total, Bouygues, Bolloré, and so on, who determined the fate of Cameroon. Today, we only have one large French company in Cameroon, and that is Bolloré. And Bolloré himself is no longer in the type of good standing in France that he was 20 years ago in terms of his ability to influence foreign policy. So I would say that the relationship between France and the Biya government today is more historical than current. So they have had a very, very close relationship for many, many years. Today, France feels that it is still in its best interest to support the Biya regime. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, well, my interpretation of the interaction between Macron and Abdoulaye Calibro was I felt this was like Macron's cry for help. I mean, I was interpreting a young man who probably was not getting along well with Biya, and because he was enshackled by all these historical antecedents, he couldn't speak out diplomatically. And when he heard Biya's name and heard genocide, he thought this was his opportunity, because he gave 5 minutes of his time and he said quite a number of things. So I was beginning to wonder, could it be because the United States and China have actually shifted France out, and France does not really control the levers of power as they used to before?
I don't think so. I don't think so. I think the strongest, the country that most strongly influences Cameroonian politics to date remains France. I think that while we have developed other relationships with the US and with China, those relationships are not yet what the relationship with France is. And I think that we just need to look at countries like Tunisia, like Algeria, like Burkina Faso, who had as strong relationships with France, if not stronger, than we did. And what do we see in all of these countries? That France supported the dictatorial regime up to the point where they were convinced that a change was about to happen. And when they know that a change is about to happen, and this is true, in my opinion, for all Western countries, they will support whoever has been protecting their interests until that moment where they feel like this thing is going to change. And when they feel it is going to change, they will drop that person like a hot potato with no qualms whatsoever. We saw it with Ben Ali in Tunisia. We saw it with Blaise Compaoré in Burkina Faso. We saw it with Bouteflika in Algeria. France will drop its best boy, the person whom you feel like they are so attached to this one, but they will drop that guy in minutes when they believe that the thing is about to change, and we need to put ourselves on the side of whomever is going to be in control tomorrow. So this is why we believe that the destiny of Cameroon is in Cameroonian hands. So far, we have not demonstrated, not only to France, but to the rest of the world, that we as Cameroonians are unhappy with the current situation in Cameroon. We have not made that demonstration. Once we start to make that demonstration, we will have new allies very, very quickly. There's no doubt in my mind about it. And that is why the focus for the Cameroon People's Party and for Stand Up for Cameroon is on the Cameroonian people.
So I take it then that nothing is likely to change much from Macron's promises to call Biya and to put pressure, even especially following the recent meeting with Biya and the French ambassador Christophe.
No, I think he's going to reiterate. I think that, listen, I think we as Cameroonians, we underestimate this Biya government. We find them to be ridiculous. We find them to be buffoons. And in many ways they are. However, these are people who have one single objective. They don't care about building roads. They don't care about building hospitals. They don't care about whether Cameroonians have health care or not. All of those things to them are secondary. They have one objective, which is to stay in power. And they are extremely good at it. If they were not, they would not have been here for 38 years. So they know how to play the international community. Isn't it amazing that after Macron's statement, he received no repercussions whatsoever from Yaoundé? Nobody even said, oh, look, this is not acceptable in diplomatic parlance.
People protested.
It is not. They instead organized marches in front of the French embassy, marches which nobody can link to Biya. So they chose that means of demonstrating their discontent. But in all formal communication, they repeated over and over again, France is our friend, we have been traditionally partners, and so on and so forth. So there you see that the Biya regime is playing France. And they have played the international community over and over and over again. We should not underestimate the intelligence of these people. They use their intelligence to one purpose: staying in power. They don't care about the rest of us. We, as you can see, they don't care if we are killing each other. They don't care whether there's electricity. They don't care whether there is water. They care about staying in power. So let's not jubilate early when we see what may look like a pressure from France. Let us buckle down, do our work. History tells us, political analysis tells us, France's mind will change when they see hundreds of thousands of Cameroonians on the street saying we no longer want Biya. In that, once they see that, within hours, their position will change. The US's position will change once they see us out in hundreds of thousands, non-violently, because the violent fight, we can talk about how the violent fight was started, and it is our sincere belief at the level of Stand Up for Cameroon and at the level of the CPP that the origin of violence in the Northwest and Southwest regions is the Biya government. There's no question about it. But there was a choice at a certain point in time to make the fight violent. Making the fight violent, from our perspective, from everything we can see on the ground, we have had very few gains with the violent fight.
Yeah, I'm actually going to come to that. Now, yes, I've got a quote from you on that, so I will come to that. So now, with you, you studied in the United States. one might say that probably you've got a soft spot for them or not. What? So can you just tell me, what do you think their integrity is with regards to their involvement with other countries such as Cameroon? Do they have some sort of integrity in their international relations?
I always give these direct answers, which would get me into trouble. No, they do not have integrity. And no Western country does. Look at their history. I mean, this is the United States. Look at the way that they have behaved with the South American countries. They behave with those countries exactly the way that France behaves with us. So, so no, it's not a question of integrity. It is again a question of interests. The US has made a number of statements which are positive for Cameroon, which enable us to hold on to and to use as leverage in our international advocacy in dealing with these with the US itself and with other countries. We should continue to do so. However, let's not have any illusions. The US is still partnering with Mr. Biya, is still selling arms to Mr. Biya, is still giving military assistance. Are they doing that? I've not seen that the people of Cameroon are willing to do what it takes to an alternative. So it's very important that we focus on ourselves. Please, nobody is coming to save us. Nobody is coming to save us. We must save ourselves. Nobody is coming to save us, because look around the world. If they haven't saved Syria, are we more important to these people than Syria? Look around the world and look at Burma, where you see a population of the minority population. The name is going off my mind. You know, around the world, the Cameroonian situation is not so special. It's special to us because we are Cameroonians. It's special to us because we are the ones dying. We are the ones hurting. Our communities are breaking down. But it is not special to the rest of the world. There are so many situations like that. And people who find their way are people who take into their hands their own destiny.
So with I don't know if you've listened to the video where Thibaut Nagy was responding to an Amazonian leader who, when he said, amongst other things, he said that the US supports a united Cameroon and that sanctions work more than military intervention. So the question therefore, which I ask, I mean, it's obviously your opinion, is why do you think that the US has so far, I think you've already given an answer anyway, why have they not used targeted sanctions against members of the Biya regime? They keep talking. And the reason I ask this question is because I get frustrated when I see Cameroonians, when Thibaut Nagy, for example, says something that looks as if he's just criticizing the government, they start thanking him. All out of 1,000 comments, 900 will be thank you, sir. Thank you for this. And when the AGOA happened, no one cared to read into the fine print. People were thanking the US and jumping. So I'm asking this because it's important that we understand the dynamics. Why is it that there is recently the Pompey, the past travel bans on the former Attorney General of Kenya is no more in power on corruption charges. The US bans him and his whole family from traveling. But we've got human rights abuses, which the Congress has acknowledged abuses have been committed on both sides. But we know only one side can actually be given travel bans. And it's the regime. So why is it that the US is not doing anything about it?
Well, I think these are some of the elements where we, those who decided for the armed fight, did not take into account all of the complexity of what that would entail. Because you have just said there are two sides fighting. There are two sides with arms. One is a state, the other one are non-state actors. So the first thing to know in international diplomacy is that states side with states. States will generally side with states. It takes a lot for a state to do anything that will favor a non-state actor. Because when we look at secessionist movements, every country has a secessionist movement. Every country has somebody who is unhappy and so on, and who wants to go away. The tendency among states is to support other states. So the US finds itself in a position with two armed groups, both of whom are committing atrocities. So if you take sanctions against one side, what does that mean? It means that indirectly you have supported the other side.
Right, yeah.
They will have a lot of difficulty doing that. So, but that does not mean that we, the Stand Up for Cameroon, we were one of the first groups to call for targeted sanctions. We called for individual sanctions, and we have continued to do so with towards the US government, towards the French, towards the United Nations. We have continued to call for sanctions, and we will continue to do so. But those who opted for an armed fight have made things more difficult for us, because when you go for an armed fight, you lose the moral high ground.
Yeah.
Every time that you say, look at atrocities that government is committing, government is in a position to say, but look at the atrocities that armed groups are committing. So this is why we have always felt that the way to fight this fight is non-violently, and we still believe that today that the armed fight is hurting us. It is not helping us, whether it be here on the ground with our communities, whether it be with our people who are their loss is so tremendous that I don't even know how to describe it, and whether it is with international advocacy. We are in a weaker position when we are advocating because of the armed groups on the ground and the fact that you have non-state actors. The definition of a state is the monopoly of violence. Yeah. That is part of the definition of a state. So imagine that another state, imagine that another state who defines itself as somebody who has the monopoly of violence. Once you have non-state actors who have arms, you put that state in a difficult position, because any assistance they give to you is a negation of themselves, and is opening the door that in their own state, then other non-state actors should be permitted to bear arms.
So yeah, well, I mean, I'll
to use
violence quickly, because we're really running. Now let's look at the United Kingdom. I mean, some of us, we've protested. So what do you think that activists? There will be a protest here, for example, on Commonwealth Day. The Southern Cameroon's community on the 9th of that's Monday, 9th of March. They're going out to protest, and they'll be asking suspend Cameroon. Do you really think the the United Kingdom, for example, has anything it can really do to change the course of the things in the Northwest and Southwest regions?
Well, international advocacy is important, and it should be continued. I think it is something that the diaspora should continue to do. The UK is in an interesting position right now, because due to Brexit, it is going to be much stronger on foreign policy on its own than it had been at the time that it was part of Europe. So I think that it is important that I think that it is important that those of you who are going out to protest in the UK should continue to do so. However, I think it is important that the diaspora realizes that you cannot change Cameroon from the outside. The change has to come from within. So I ask every diaspora group, what is your link to groups on the ground who are working? If you have resources of £100 or €100, you should be giving 75 to the people on the ground and using 25 to do your advocacy. It is very, very important to be linked to groups on the ground, to allow the groups on the ground to lead. The other thing the diaspora cannot do is lead, because we are on the ground living the situation day to day and have an understanding of the complexities on the ground here, which nobody who is 6,000 miles away or 2,000 miles away or even 500 miles away can understand. They cannot understand the situation the way we do. So it is important. The international advocacy is very important. The bit of pressure that has been brought on the BR government, a good part of it is international, but with the pressure from within Cameroon is rising, is increasing, and we are continuing to put that pressure on the government of Cameroon. And it's important that those who are in the diaspora liaise with us for us to increase the internal pressure.
Yeah, so let's look at China. Do you think China has enough political capital to exert any significant influence in Cameroon?
Not yet. Honestly, not yet. China has had a very different relationship with the world. They are moving towards superpower status, even militarily. If you look at the positions that China is now occupying at the level of the UN and several international bodies, they have decided to exercise their military power as well as their economic power. So I think we are going to start seeing a China that looks a lot more in its relationship that looked a lot more like what we have seen from Western countries in the past. They are providing military aid to Cameroon and to other countries, but I don't think the clout is yet what that of a European Union, of France, or the United States would be. But we saw them at the Security Council, right? So we saw I think Cameroonians, as you say, did not take time to go through that area meeting and to clearly, to really analyze what happened there, because we saw in that area meeting who are the friends of the people of Cameroon and who are the friends of the regime. The friends of the people of Cameroon were those who convened the area, right? So more the US, Belgium, European Union, and so on. And those who sided with the regime, interestingly enough, was the African Union, Russia, and China. So we shouldn't have any illusions, because those people expressed themselves during that meeting and at that international level are playing a very interesting game. We have just seen Russia win the contract for the rebuilding of Sonara, right?
Yeah.
And in return take a lot of stands that are in favor of the regime within these international.
Yeah, the Russian ambassador Anatoly Bashkin actually said that foreign interference in Cameroon is something that should not be supported. Well, I do agree that if you take into context the type of intervention in, say, Libya. But then what he did say that is really curious is that there is no humanitarian emergency in Cameroon. I mean, how correct is that?
Yes.
I mean, anyway, it makes sense within the context of what you're just saying.
Yes. So I totally agree with you. I do not want to see military intervention. We do not want to see military intervention by any state into Cameroon, because the experience with that over time has shown us that it can make things even worse than they are today. In Syria today, I mean, I think one of the most interesting things that has happened in the news this week is to see Russia and Turkey signing not a peace treaty, but a ceasefire over Syria. I mean, that is a terrible, it's a terrible thing, and we don't want Cameroon to be in that position. However, we need to continue the pressure very strongly, because people are dying. When I understand very much the emotion that leads some Cameroonians to ask for military intervention from the US, military intervention from France, and so on, because people are dying, and we feel like we need that dying to stop. And we absolutely need that dying to stop. However, history tells us, political analysis tells us, none of these countries is our friend. These are people with interests, with specific interests. And their military intervention into our country will mean that they will start using Cameroon as a playground to fight each other. And generally, what has happened in other places is that that means that Cameroonians lose. If today, with the way things are being designed, if we have a US intervention, we will have Russia backing the regime. And when they face each other, when those big powers face each other in our territory, we are the big losers.
Okay, now enough about politics. Let's go to activism, which is the last aspect we'll be talking on.
Yes,
and probably,
it's late for me, and I have to go to mass tomorrow in black.
Black, I know. So, but I mean, the thing is, why I think we needed to get a background to this is because you've already made it clear that, okay, armed intervention is not really something that would succeed, of course, which I agree. You talk about nonviolence, but this sometimes seems to fly over people's heads. And, you know, people ask questions. I've seen Balen Blanche has asked there, why don't you work with Camto? And they've asked those. So all of this comes because there are different layers. I mean, many people sometimes confuse, where does politics start and end, and where does activism start? And just to be clear, not every politician is an activist. And yeah, I mean, most activists actually try to influence politics. So now you are both a politician and an activist, and that puts you in a unique position where you have to straddle the lines of politics and activism. And I would just say that it was on the 30th of March 2016 that you wrote on your blog that 4 political parties came together to launch Stand Up for Cameroon initiative. So what are these parties? What are these 4 political parties? I mean, let me emphasize that it was 2016 when you people launched that initiative. So it's actually not new.
Absolutely. Stand Up for Cameroon was launched on the 30th of March, 2016. It was launched at CRM headquarters in Oja, in Yaoundé. The 4 parties were the CPP, the UPC Manidem, the CRM, and Univers, the Univers party, which eventually carried the candidacy of Cabral Libi to the presidency. So these are the 4 parties who launched Stand Up for Cameroon. Now, that said, there are 2 parties at the core of Stand Up for Cameroon who you know, are really the brain children. The Stand Up for Cameroon is the brainchild of these parties. It is the CPP and the UPC managed them. We had been working on a movement since 2014. When in 2016, this government, this regime threatened to hold elections, early elections. Some people have forgotten about that episode. They wanted to hold early elections in 2016. We came out for the first time as Stand Up for Cameroon, and we are very proud of that year because we stopped that initiative and we were able to get the regime to back down. I tell people that this is a moment in history that is escaping some Cameroonians, because it was the first time since the 90s that the opposition was able to push back the CPDM on an initiative that they had taken.
That same 2016, you made a call to action, and it was and I quote, every Friday as of the 1st of April, that's 2016, all Cameroonians should wear black to protest the lack of water, electricity, roads, healthcare, education, and basic services. And when you look at when Mancho eventually came later that year, it was similar, things that he was asking for. Why is it that there was some sort of a disconnect between what the revolution Mancho started and what you people have already started doing, given that the objectives were similar?
We will. I think when we write history, we are too busy now to. We are all too busy right now to tell you all of the stories, because there are a lot of things that happen behind the scenes. The Anglophone movement, especially the lawyers, when they started in 2017, I think it was in early 2017, I think it was March or so, Bobga Harmony, who was one of the lawyers leading the movement, came and met us and said, lawyers want to do Friday in Black. Yes, okay. So it was May 2000. So because we had launched this movement and the response was quite strong and we had succeeded in pushing back the government. And he came to us and he said, could we use the Friday in Black to protest the situation for Anglophone lawyers? And we said absolutely, because the conception of Stand Up from Cameroon from the beginning has been the merging of all fights, bringing all of these different fights together so that we can face the one cause, because all these fights have only one cause, and it is the BR regime. So when they met with us, we were very happy. We decided to give them all types of support. Unfortunately, and this is one of, again, the challenges with with our Anglophone fight, is that when Harmony Bogba went back and met with the lawyers, there were CPDM people amongst the lawyers. There were CPDM people, and they said, no. Friday in Black is attached to political parties. We don't want to have anything to do with political parties. And I think that this mistake, I believe it is a serious mistake that some Anglophones made in saying that the Anglophone fight is not about regime change. It's a mistake which has cost us tremendously. It is a mistake which has cost us tremendously, because when you do not identify your oppressor, when you do not clearly identify your oppressor and say, this is where the oppression is coming from, and we must deal with that oppression, you make the oppression diffuse, and it becomes all Francophones who are our problem, instead of it being about the people who are in power, be they Francophone or Anglophone. I challenge Anglophones on this today. I do not understand, because I still see some people saying Francophones are doing this, Francophones are doing that. And I ask them, who has been worse to Anglophones in this crisis than Anglophones?
Yeah.
My greatest disappointment is that I have not seen not one Anglophone who is in government or even close to government come out and make a public statement about this crisis and say it has to stop. And say that they are challenging their own government, the team that they belong to say no. We have not seen any Anglophone in that government who said, no, we cannot have elections while blood is being spilled. No, they walked on the corpses and went and did their elections. And some of them were drinking whiskey or whatever afterwards, and we were watching them. So if you do not identify your oppressor, who is oppressing you? If we continue to make this thing about Anglophones and Francophones, instead of making it about a regime within which there are Anglophones and there are Francophones, and in the last couple of years, the Anglophones in that regime have been, I can say, the devil himself. The Anglophones within that regime have been the ones who continuously said there is no problem. They don't see what the problem is all about. They are the ones who have led the charge in increasing the level of violence against our people. They are the ones who have gone to the ground and corrupted people. They are the ones who have gone to the ground and confused the fight and made people to be fighting against each other. You don't know who is who. I think we have to be clear who is our oppressor.
Yeah,
and one of the reasons we did not come together, to answer your original question, why didn't we come together, was because people were trying to make it an Anglophone fight rather than making it a fight against the regime.
Yeah, well, recently, I've seen a lot of people, and I did get a lot of questions on this because, there are Francophones who have been trying to come in, and a lot are beginning to align with the CRM, and there are people who are aligning with Maurice Kamto. And so when you were on Max Senior Ivoire's platform, you said it is going to be difficult to put all the different forces together in Cameroon if the MRC doesn't leave this election story. The issue is currently national. Elections took place. They were bad. When a game is bad, you don't stay and say, I won the game. That was bad. We all saw the election was wrong. We have all seen what happened during this election. That's my translation. It might not be accurate, so
Yes, no, you did a very good translation.
Yeah. So I've read these statements over and over, and in the context of the fact that, I didn't even know that the 4 political parties actually included the CRM, which means that you've been working with them in the past. And in the context of the fact that the CRM has also moved from elections, they've now advocated for boycott, meaning that somehow they've accepted that boycott in 2018 would have been a good thing. So why is it that you think there's something lost in translation, not from English to French or French to English, but in understanding? Why is it that people don't get it when you said, okay, let's work now in synergy towards a common objective? I think someone has actually asked why you are not working with Kamto. So I just don't understand why it is that people find it hard to understand.
I think these are difficult questions to answer in public, because whenever you do, like you mentioned Max Ivoire's show, where he was extremely polite and direct. I gave him a very direct answer, which he understood, but then which created really a reaction from what I hear, because I don't go online much to read whatever people are saying, especially on Facebook. But what I was saying is this: you have a lot of people. The discourse of the CRM at this point in time lacks clarity for the other political actors. It lacks clarity because, as you just mentioned, they went to elections in 2018. They came in 2020 and said they were boycotting elections for the same reasons which were in place in 2018.
Yeah.
These were now presented almost as if it was something new that they had realized and for which they were not going to elections. That is fine. As I say, we don't ask why people are boycotting. You want to boycott, we are happy to have you on board. But now, since their release from prison, and I would want to state here for people to understand, when the CRM was in prison, even though we never agreed with their strategy of going to elections, when they were arrested, we were the first, and I think one of the few political parties to say it is unacceptable. You cannot violate the rights of a political party in this manner. We put our lawyer at the disposal of the CRM, and the CRM, I think it was within 24 hours of their arrest in the country, I called our lawyer and I said, please put yourself at their disposal. I am sure if he knew that that was going to be a 9-month assignment, maybe he would have told me, ma'am, I have some 1 or 2 other things to do. But he stayed by their side for 9 months.
Oh, wow.
We held press conferences continuously. We changed all of our communication to focus on them being in prison. We visited them in prison. We went to their trial sessions. So it's quite offensive, actually. It's quite offensive when we get from CRM people, why are you not working with CRM? I think that our support to the CRM is unquestionable. We have supported them throughout the problems that they have had. Now they are out of prison. We are at a stage where we must define a political agenda. And my response to Max Ivoire, because people are listening to the response without listening to his question. His question was, why do you not put yourself behind the leader who is come to? Why do all the other political leaders not put themselves behind this man? And he said, I believe this man is carrying the torch of change for Cameroon, and you should put yourselves behind this man. And I said to him, we do not put ourselves behind people. I see a lot of CRM supporters who are all about their leader. I think that is fantastic. That is their choice. It is beautiful. The CRM has built up an enormous dynamic on the field. That is fantastic. We are happy to have it. It is contributing greatly to the movement of change in Cameroon. However, for another political party, for a movement like Stand Up for Cameroon to come together with the CRM party, we must have common objectives. We do not come behind because we like somebody or we think somebody is interesting or whatever. We come on the basis of a platform. Yeah. And what I said to Max Ivoire was, the platform cannot be about a president-elect. For us, it cannot be. The Stand Up for Cameroon movement, we didn't go to an election. We did not participate in an election. We didn't elect anybody. The Stand Up for Cameroon movement, we observed the elections. The elections were bad. They were fraudulent. They were there was all manner of corruption and cheating. when you have a corrupt game, any corrupt game, what do? You cancel the game and you start over.
Absolutely.
So for us, it is difficult to find the basis when the CRM is still defending a victory of a fraudulent election in which we did not participate. And the question I have to CRM militants who call their leader president-elect, a simple question: is he the president of Anglophones? Because Anglophones did not vote in that election. Is he the president of people who live in the Northwest and Southwest regions? Because they did not participate in that election. So when you put the basis of our collaboration to be the defense of a victory, you put us in a position where we are amiss. We don't know what to do. We see a movement that is for change. We see a movement that has a tremendous dynamic on the ground, but we are at a loss for a platform on which to create alliances. People have to understand that we are organizations. We are not individuals. They can decide as individuals to go and stand behind somebody, and when you ask them, sometimes they say they believe that that person has a grand strategy in his head and it will all be revealed in time. We don't have that kind of liberty. We cannot do that. For us to enter partnerships, we must agree on platforms. And for us, the platform cannot be the defense of a victory of the 2018 elections. It's that was the simple thing that I said that created a lot of energy.
And I mean, again, just in line with that, in March 2019, during a panel discussion at the Elliott School of International Affairs at the George Washington University, when you spoke about the crisis in Cameroon, you accused the diaspora of lies and hypocrisy. These comments did not also go well with many Ambazonians at the time. I mean, do you think that many are now beginning to see the point you were making, especially given that some of them have actually come on air to say, we lied, and a lot of things, the scales are falling. People are realizing that a lot was built on false propaganda. Do you think they're beginning to see that, and would that lead to some sort of synergy going forward?
Absolutely. I think that people, first of all, my statement at that time created so much havoc in the diaspora. It reminds me, this moment with the CRM reminds me of that moment. All of this noise is coming from the diaspora. Here on the ground, we don't have a problem. I think you saw me with Michelle Ndoki today. Have been at the events yesterday, today, and they will be there tomorrow. We don't have a problem here on the ground. I think sometimes the diaspora, maybe because you guys don't have the opportunity to come and march and be locked up and have water sprayed on you. You have a surplus of energy to spend on the internet, and it sometimes gets out of hand. I think that as far as the Anglophone movement is concerned, at the time when the secessionists went so far as to dare to put a price on my head, I can tell you that amongst the first 20 calls that I got of people who were supporting me, who were calling me to say, please don't pay any attention to this and so on and so. Of the first 20 calls I got, 15 were from the ground in Cameroon. The people who were saying, don't worry. And most of them were from ground zero. And at least 3 of them were from fighters who called to tell me that, madam, nobody from across the ocean somewhere can fool us to tell us to kill you. It is impossible. Continue to do your work. without any fear, without any problem. We know who you are. We know what you represent. We know that you disagree with us, but we know that you have been working for our people.
Yeah, well, with regards to the same armed struggle, you've said that the strategy has obtained nothing from the regime and is totally destructive to Anglophone society. It is time for those who launch the armed strategy to step back, evaluate, regroup, and continue the fight for Anglophone rights without violence. If they refuse to do so, they are no better than this evil regime. I mean, do you genuinely think there is an alternative response to the violence of the regime against the people that can create impact? I mean, of course, you've said there that without violence, which means you're advocating for non-violence. But when you look at what happened in Gabu, when you look at what happened in Babanki, which happens to be my village, sometimes people feel like when that happens, their only legitimate response should be violence. I mean, I know historically we have more cases where non-violence won over violence than the cases where violence actually won. But I mean, in the case of Cameroon, with your experience, how do you think we can move forward when I put the picture of the young girls? Many people, particularly the Francophones, might not even recognize those pictures. Those were girls who were carried from Boya. And I always put that to remind that I don't even know where they are today. They were not doing anything at the time. There were no Amber Boys and all that. But that is how our own sisters were treated by their own government. So how do we begin to tell people who are treated so badly that, look, calm down, there is an alternative? And what is that alternative?
So I would say, Kingsley, thank you so much I'm really loving your questions. Thank you so much for that question. We have to be meticulous in our analysis. I understand the emotion that makes somebody want to react with the violence when they are treated so violently by the government. I have said it in every intervention for the last 4 years. There is no confusion, there is no ambiguity as to who started the violence. The violence was started by the regime, and the violence has continued to this stage because of the regime. There's no ambiguity about it. However, we also have to look very closely. This fight was non-violent from October 2016 all the way to September 2017. It was on the large scale non-violent. There were some schools that were burnt and so on, but the Anglophone movement was non-violent. And I will ask you, in that year, how many of our people died?
Yeah.
While the fight was non-violent, we lost fewer people.
Yeah.
I hear people say, oh, the Amber Boys are there to defend the people. Kingsley, I want to know, which is that village that the army was coming to attack, and that because the Amber Boys were defending, the army went back?
No.
Do we have even one instance of defense? The violence of the non-state groups has simply enabled a violent person. You see, the problem is that the government of Cameroon is superior in its armament. It is superior in its number of men. It is superior in its willingness to use violence. So when you have somebody who is repressive by nature and who has decided to use that repression against the people, when they meet an armed fight, it simply means that they can justify more and more intensive levels of violence.
Yeah,
so I understand the emotion, but I think we need to step back from the emotion and count our bodies, count our dead bodies.
Yeah.
And we will realize that during the non-violent fight, We got as many gains from this government. During the non-violent fight is when they said, oh, we are going to translate Ohada. It is when they said, oh, we are going, when they changed the rules in Enam and the other schools. It is when they said, oh, we will hire this number of teachers. Oh, we will do, all the concessions came during the non-violent period. Since the violence started, we have had no concessions, and we have had our communities, you know, sometimes I wish that I could take that diaspora and bring them to the ground here. Because I think it is distance. Yes, I think it is distance,
I'm not going to come.
which is also making them so oblivious to the complete destruction of our own communities.
Yeah.
No Francophone side is being destroyed. No minister, nobody in government is having any trouble. All the trouble is ours. We sat in the church today with about 1,000 people. When somebody said, who has been affected by this violence, please stand up. Over 800 people stood up. They are not government ministers. They are not part of the BR regime. They are not, it's only the ordinary people like ourselves. So, this violent fight, what I want to know, what have been the gains?
Yeah, now within that same context, I mean, when Gabu happened, surprisingly, we got some of the Amazonian leaders, I'm not calling their names, they know themselves, they rather ignored that and started asking for Francophones to leave. And I mean, I don't need to be there to know that when the call was made sometime before, those Francophones who had money left. So I don't think that there's anyone who has got money who is still sitting there waiting to be told to leave. So those who have money have actually left. But what really I want you to clarify is what your take is why do you think that something happens like Gabu, and while the war is shouting, someone instead goes and starts telling Francophones to leave? I mean, basically causing a distraction and shifting attention from the person who had just committed an atrocious crime against the people they claim to be fighting for.
I cannot tell you. I do not understand it. I do not understand this type of leadership that seems to have an incapacity to evaluate, analyze, and re-strategize. Excuse me. I do not understand leadership that puts its own people in the line of fire. I do not understand it. I'm sorry. And when we have the situation like we have had of Ngarbu, to leave that, this is a moment, this moment of Ngarbu. Why are all of us across the country putting so much emphasis in this moment? Because this was a moment where we caught the government red-handed. Massacres have been going on. People have been being killed. We have been getting the stories. But this was a moment where government was caught in a moment where they could not easily get themselves out. There are horrible stories, and I am not yet convinced of one version of the Ngarbu story or the other. I think it was a very complex situation, and there were a lot of things going on the ground. But what seems to be clear is that government used disproportionate force, and they used it against non-combatants. We caught them, and we are able to put pressure on them nationally and internationally, and somebody goes to create a distraction.
Yeah, well, I mean, just to add that it was actually a Francophone lady, someone who is part Bamileke, part Bulu, who went out in the UK and right in front of the Cameroon High Commission almost set herself on fire in distress against what happened. And you know, because I just need us to point that out, that these are the Francophones you're telling to leave. But that on that day, there were thousands of Anglophones in the UK. They were not out there that day doing that memorial from Gabu. She was there almost emulating herself. So I think sometimes these are things that people need to really put in context, especially when they want to talk about using Francophones and Anglophone, because what she did that day, I was standing right there and I froze. When I saw, I froze. I didn't know what was happening. I mean, one little ignition and she would have been burnt, with probably with 2 police officers. That's not something I and Anglophone was even ready to do. I mean, I could not think of doing that, but she was doing it. She has no stake. But then someone is telling, I don't know whether she's got family there, you're telling her family to leave. So I mean, that contradiction all of a sudden makes me wonder if the problem really is strategy.
Well, I honestly speaking, have stopped trying to figure out the secessionist leaders a long time ago. I do not try to figure it out, because for me, I have not understood the strategy. I have not understood the persistence in this strategy, and I still have the question: what's your end game? How does all of this play out in your mind? So I think once again that we have to focus on that majority of Cameroonians. While they are talking about Anglophones and Francophones are marching together here in Cameroon. The march we did in Yaoundé was a joint march, Anglophones and Francophones together. The march we did, the services we have been doing since yesterday. The Imam today spoke up in church and said he was so touched by the problem of the Northwest and Southwest. This is the Imam of the Central Mosque in Bonaberi, and he explained what he is seeing on the ground in Bonaberi with regard to internally displaced people, and how he could not stay away from this service and he had to come and speak his mind. So I don't know exactly what the strategy is for these people. I don't know how they're going to divide us, because they've now created a war where so many Anglophones are on the Francophone side. So they are very self-defeating in their purpose, because so many Anglophones are on the Francophone side. So many Anglophone businesses have moved to the Francophone side. Anglophone children have moved and are going to school in the Francophone side. I have children in my house who last year, when they came, they could not speak a word of French. Beyond bonjour, they were lost. Right now, they are completely fluent in French. So I don't know what the purpose is, but what I can say is that we have a situation where Anglophones have come to the Francophone side. They have been well received on the Francophone side. They have not been the object or the target of any violence or aggression. And I don't see how. I have always asked the difference between the woman who is roasting fish in Walla and the woman who is roasting corn in Abakwa, in Bamenda. I don't know what is the difference between those two women. I don't see how the regime has given any better opportunity to one more than the other.
Yeah, well, I mean, because we should be rounding up, but there is something that I came across in your presentation at the Dickey Center. You see that on the screen there. And there were some words, because the question that many people have asked is, why is it that the Francophones are not coming out? Of course, it's not just the Francophones. I would always point out that, I mean, not every Anglophone has come out anyway. So you don't expect it, but we are expecting something to happen like happened in Sudan or Burkina Faso. But then I've asked this question over and over: why is that their lethargy? Why is there that resistance in Cameroon? And you sort of provided the answer in this. So I'm not going to paraphrase your words. I'm going to play it so that those who cannot listen to the whole talk can at least hear that part. So just bear with me.
How do you put up with this for 35 years? And the single best answer when dictators manipulate people's hands, they manipulate it. I have one of the most sophisticated dictators in the world. It's a pleasure to be here at the same time as John I've for years, and he has had the opportunity to and not the guys in the mind. The incidents of violence up to about 2 years ago could be taken out. But just enough violence and just random, that's the secret that everybody is afraid. So we are in this room and more people are challenging the violence than deserve. And the loudest voice developed. And I walked into the room and I touched this gentleman over here. Right? What happened? No one was talking about this. She was in the front of the line. Why am I taking it out on him? And so what they do, what I have just done is make them concern of their line. That's all. Right? So this is being and hearing your now don't get me wrong, the threaten will send our so it's not like this a nice person, but enough here. And it's all the time. 2005. I have to explain so that I never demonstrate anything. We'll just start going. So people preventive arrest.
So yes, well, I'm sure everyone has heard, and I don't know if you watched that back, but the way you captured, I mean, because as someone who goes out to protest in Europe, I know that one thing that actually really keeps me nervous is the prospect of what is going to happen. I mean, the British police have done it a lot. I mean, in 2019. So just so that people understand again, that it's not just limited to Cameroon. The state naturally does that. The UK police arrested me 4 times in 2019. I wasn't doing anything, but they just knew that arresting me. I've got Pasi Yushu, who is just there. He was commenting, and I've got someone, Sibrak. He was also there. He's also been arrested here in the UK. We're all charged. They sometimes charged us with beating police officers, which we didn't do. We go and we win the cases, but they still keep doing it, and they still keep doing it. And now, I mean, this is a state of law. We go and we win. But I just want to say, now, when you put it in the context of Cameroon and using Pierre, leaving those who are vocal and actually targeting the people who are not talking. I mean, it makes sense in the instance because I never understood why they went after Sisqo Ayutabe and left those who were advocating violence, who were talking war. I mean, Ayabacho Lucas has talked war for a long time, but they didn't go after him. They went after Ayutabe, who was just new in the game and was actually not really talking violence at the time. And when you see women and children being killed and all that, I mean, is that all part of the plan? And if that is the case, what do you say people can do to overcome that? Since that is their tactics, and it seems to have worked so well for 38 years.
I think that, yes, I think Bia has a very, very interesting style of dictatorship. And he very often goes rather after the weaker link than the stronger one. And as we've said, keeping the line, as I said there, in keeping the line unclear means that people stay very far back away. I think that we are overcoming that fear. This is actually a very exciting moment in Cameroon. If you look at different protests, different activities, different things against the regime that have been organized, you see the numbers growing. You see that Cameroonians are overcoming fear. We see it with our Friday in Black. We see the numbers growing. We see people from all over the country deciding to put on the black. We are seeing it this weekend so strongly with this 8th of March in Black. So I think that the fear is slowly being overcome. I think that it's due to two things. One is that there are movements. So people feel like I can join something, I can do something. And the situation is becoming so bad that people are getting more afraid of the life they are living or the life they may be losing than the regime which is in front of them. So I think that there's a tendency today towards overcoming that fear. I think that we see non-violent protests increasing because we talk about the ones which are political, but there are actually non-violent protests in this country going on every day.
Yeah.
People who are fighting for their economic rights, people, the shortage of electricity has meant that in the last month, we have had over 3 protests in the streets of Walla. So I think that we see people getting to breaking point. And one thing we have done is to get in touch with our brothers and sisters in Burkina, in Tunisia, in Egypt, who conducted these kinds of movements. And they tell us all the same thing. They all tell us the same thing. Keep working, keep working. Keep educating the people, keep organizing protests. They all told us we did not know the day. We did not know the day that the people decided to come out. All of them told us, if anybody tells you that they knew that on so and so day at so and so time, that would be the protest where the people would come out, we do not know. But, you know, and they explaining to us, the Tunisians told us how 1 week before they had organized protests, there were only about 50 of them, they got arrested, they got beaten, and so on. So the day the people were actually coming out, they themselves could not believe it. So I think that there is always that breaking point for a population. There's always that moment where the people have had enough. Cameroon, it has happened on numerous occasions. It has happened with in the 90s with the move towards democracy. It happened in 2008, and anybody who knows Cameroon, I lived both of those moments, and I can tell you I have full faith in the Cameroonian people. The moment is on its way. It's not far.
Yeah, well, thanks so much for that. I mean, just one last main question from me, and then if you have, you are happy, I could just take a few from the audience and then round up. But this one is about the book, The Next Africa, where you are presented as a symbol of the new generation of African political leadership. It talks about leading Africa towards the achievement of global standards of development while respecting principles of good governance, equity, and democracy. I would say that I've read a bit, and then I've watched, and I hear your perspective of African governance using the local institutions about, you know, how there's that gender balance and that sharing of power. I mean, I'm from the Northwest, so I understand that all too well. But don't you think it's a bit utopic at this time, considering the influence, how much, I mean, we've seen in the last 3 years where people are willing to destroy those traditions in favor of the Anglo-Saxon one that we had for just 50 years, which I live in England and I cannot define.
Yes. One of the most horrible things to me that has happened in the last 3 years is that the use of the word Anglo-Saxon to describe the African that I am is is something which really rubs me the wrong way, and I don't understand. I think these are some of the ways in which the people who are leading the movement have misled the people. We are not Saxons. Saxons are by definition people with straight blonde hair. So we cannot be Saxons. And I don't want to be an African in 2020 defining myself as an Anglo-Saxon. It is an aberration of my, it's an aberration. It's an aberration. I don't think it's utopic. You know, the one thing that I know and love about human beings is that we are resilient. We are people who can come back from almost anything. And this is why we fight so strongly for political transition, because we must have that moment where we talk to people, where we bring back our history, where we teach the history, and where we do not start history from the day that the British decided to colonize us. We were people before the British ever came, with traditions, with ways of doing things, with institutions, and our people do not know what those are. And it's important for us to educate and to inform with regard to that. So I don't think it's utopic. You know, I have the privilege. I am an extremely privileged person in terms of the work I do. As I mentioned earlier, I have the privilege to travel all over Africa. I have seen what countries can do in a very short space of time. I just mentioned that I came back from Addis, where the Ethiopians, within 2 years, opened up their society in ways that it had been closed for decades. You know, even though there are a lot of things on which I disagree with Rwanda, fundamental democracy being one of them, but we cannot deny the development strides that they have made in less than 30 years. Nobody would imagine that was possible. And Rwanda is doing this with a population that is much less educated, much less, has much fewer resources than a population from Cameroon. So human beings can come back. That is the amazing thing about us. We can endure the most horrific of catastrophes, and we can come back from there. And that is why we are in a hurry about political transition, because there is so much healing that needs to take place. There is so much work to do for us to begin putting back this country and rebuilding something new, which all of this trauma which we have gone through will also help us to build something new and something which can be amazing. So my only problem is that I'm in a hurry. I want
people being killed. I mean, I wake up sometimes and I think that we wake up and there's no one else, no one remaining. They've killed everyone. Now, well, from me, that is as much as I will go with the questions, but there are some that I've seen on here. There's this question on the screen. It's quite long and it's in French, so I'll let you probably read it. Asking you, you know, and I would like if you could respond to that in French, please.
Okay, no problem. Donc, est-ce que les anglophones peuvent encore accepter d'être unis avec les régions francophones? La réponse, moi, je pense, c'est oui, mais ce ne serait pas facile. Ce ne serait pas du tout facile. Donc, pour que cela se fasse, d'abord, ce régime doit partir. Ce régime ne peut plus rien négocier avec les anglophones. Nous avons dit il y a 3 ans que les anglophones et le régime Biya ne pourront plus jamais cohabiter dans le même pays. Donc, le reste du pays doit choisir qu'est-ce qu'il préfère, rester avec le régime Biya ou bien rester avec les anglophones. Donc, la première des choses, c'est que le régime doit partir. Deuxièmement, nous devons entrer dans un vrai dialogue, un dialogue qui va prendre vraiment plusieurs mois, parce que nous devons revenir sur ce qui s'est passé, nous devons revenir sur l'histoire, nous devons nous dire des vérités, et en fonction de ce que nous nous disons, nous devons avoir la capacité de construire un nouveau État. Un État qui va respecter nos identités individuelles, respecter la manière dont nous sommes arrivés à l'Union, respecter le parcours historique de chacun, tout en créant un pays uni qui jouit pleinement de toute cette diversité. Je crois que c'est possible, et je le crois aussi parce que on a tendance à voir anglophones et francophones comme les anglophones dans les deux régions nord-ouest et sud-ouest et les francophones dans les 8 autres régions. C'est faux. Il y a plein de francophones, même à l'heure où nous parlons, qui vivent dans la zone anglophone. Il y a bien sûr plein d'anglophones qui vivent dans la zone francophone. Nous avons fait plus de 60 ans de vie commune. Nous avons fait 60 ans de vie commune. Ça va être difficile de nous séparer. Que va-t-on faire des enfants qui ont un parent anglophone, un parent francophone? Que va-t-on faire des anglophones qui sont propriétaires de terrains, d'entreprises, etc., en zone francophone, et vice-versa? Que va-t-on faire de tous ces éléments? Je crois qu'on doit placer le problème là où il est. Le problème commun que nous avons ensemble, anglophones et francophones, c'est le régime qui nous opprime. Débarrassons-nous d'eux et prenons le temps de reconstruire notre pays.
Thank you so much. I've got someone who's been calling on WhatsApp. Just let me see if they're here. So they've got a question here. So I'm just calling them back. Yes, hello. Yes, so can you ask your question, please?
Yes, sir. I want to first of all congratulate you, Kingsley and Walla, for edifying our people, and especially our Francophone brothers. You people are doing a marvelous job on daily TV. And my question is to my sister Walla, who have met on several occasions. Please, sister, tell us, those of us sitting here in the diaspora, how do we join you constructively in what you people are doing on the ground? Because we believe in empowering the home front and letting you people lead from the ground so that we can come behind you and get a safe passage into this country that we all know. So please, give us details of how we can contribute in our communications, in our financial means, and even physically, for those who think that the fight is on the ground and that maybe some of these fighters who have died should be replaced by people from the diaspora. Thank you, and thank you very much.
Thank you. I think I think that is Padi Asanga from The Voice. I think that one is that Stand Up for Cameroon, for example, has several diaspora members. We have the West Cameroon Movement for Change. We have the Cameroon Patriotic Diaspora. These are all organizations that are full members of Stand Up for Cameroon. At the level of Stand Up for Cameroon, when you join as a member, we have we all use social media these days to manage our business. We have a WhatsApp group, which is a coordination group of Stand Up for Cameroon. Projects are discussed there, what we are going to do, what we are planning. It is led by those of us who are here on the ground, but we discuss with the other members and we get their opinion, we get their ideas on what it is that they want to do. So, you know, if I can speak about our movement, we have diaspora members in the thinking of what as a project. We sometimes coordinate advocacy, so we may know that they are going to this to advocate in this country, and we, while they are doing the advocacy in that country, we may be meeting the embassy here on the ground to coordinate actions. There are a lot of things we do together, and then yes, all of the activities that we are carrying out, our diaspora members contribute financially as well. So I would suggest to Mr. Paddy Asanga that the best way to support the movement on the ground is to join the movement on the ground and to begin to act in consultation.
Yeah, thank you very much. Paddy, I don't know if you got that answer and if you're satisfied with your response. Hello, Paddy.
Looks like.
Yeah, it's probably gone. Yeah, well, I mean, I think that's something that probably escaped my mind because I was meaning to ask, how do people who want to support, does Stand Up for Cameroon have, says, a website or something, or how do they reach you if people want to support, like people watching us today, they want to support what you guys, people are doing on the ground, they want to support maybe financially, they want to make contributions, they want to give ideas. Is there a channel of through which they can reach Stand Up for Cameroon?
Absolutely. There is a Facebook page, Stand Up for Cameroon Facebook page, which I think is the most active to get information on Stand Up for Cameroon and to be able to find out how to contribute. I'm going to send you straight away the elements on how to contribute, so that anybody who wants to do so, I don't know if you'll be able to put it on your screen, but so that anybody who wants to do so can
what means are you sending it? Twitter?
Yes, I'm trying to send it by Twitter. Now we're going to find out how how good I am at at that in just a minute. So I'll send it to you by Twitter. But it's also on our Facebook page for anybody who wants to contribute there. I think I've managed to send it. Yeah, good. So you now have it in your Twitter inbox, and if you have a way to put it on screen, that would be great. Yes, Facebook. On our Facebook pages, you will also find our WhatsApp numbers, so you can contact us by WhatsApp. The other way to contact us is on Twitter. Stand Up for Cameroon has a Twitter account, and I personally I'm quite I'm quite active on Twitter, and you can contact me directly. Inbox my messages are open. Oh, thank you very much, Kingsley. That is the information on how to contribute. And thank you to all who are listening, who may have provided some financial support for the activities of this weekend. It has been tremendous. We got a much higher response than we expected. We were really in a challenging financial situation, and we're very happy to see people step up to the plate.
Okay, yeah. Now, it's our tradition on this program that before we end, we always have a lighter note where we ask you some really what we call the fire round questions. They are just alternatives and don't really think much about them, but some can be very difficult alternatives. You're meant to choose one without really thinking about them. So, are you ready?
Yes, I will try to be.
Okay, so West Cameroon or Southern Cameroons?
Oof. You start with a tough one. West, I think. Yeah.
France or China?
Oof. Oh my goodness. Either.
Victoria or Limbe?
Limbe. I don't. Why the name of an English queen is better than the name of a river? No, not for me.
Yeah. Michel Ndoki or Agbon Kongo?
Oof. I will take both in their in different moments to do different things.
Yeah, well, I mean, you just pick up one at the back of the moment.
I know, but
okay,
you know,
yeah, federalism or decentralization?
Federalism, but we must say what is inside federalism, because
2 states or 4 states?
10.
National dialogue or Swiss this process?
National dialogue after Mr. Bia is gone.
Okay. Need John Frundi or Maurice Kamto?
Oof. I mean, they're not in the same moment in time.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Well, Ekwang or Kwakoko?
Ekwang or Kwakoko, is that it?
Ekwang or Kwakoko?
Wow. Ekwang, but you know, I'll take Kwakoko on any other day. Yeah.
Christiana Amampo or Mimi Mefo Takambo?
Ooh. Yeah, definitely not for the same thing. Mimi Mefo. Yeah.
Donald Trump or Emmanuel Macron?
I would take Macron. I really don't like Trump. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't like Macron much either, but in a tight space, I'll take Macron.
Yes, I've got Julius Chofo here. He's calling, so if you can just get his question, maybe that would be the last question.
That's the absolute last one. Absolute.
Yeah. Hello, yes, you're live now. Madam Kawala is listening to you.
Hello, good evening, Madam Kawala and Kingsley. Thank you very much for your excellent program, as usual. My question to Madam Kawala is, do you think that a one Cameroon can ever be achieved without, first of all, making the other side to understand that we are two countries equal in status that came together as to form one country? Do you think that we can go on pretending that, you know, we are just one country, you know, or that Cameroon was part of their country that was divided or taken away and has been given back? Or don't you think that we need to disengage with them politically, and then before we get them to come and sit and talk to us, talk about this one Cameroon? Can we just continue pretending that we are just one country with a bad government instead of, I mean, we talk of bad governance, but when Southern Cameroon was annexed, Paul Biya was not even in politics in 1961. So do you think we can achieve the kind of one Cameroon that you're looking for without first disengaging politically and then coming together on the table to create that one Cameroon? That's my question.
Wow. What a question for a last one. We are going back back into the middle of the discussion. Thank you for your question. Thank you for your question, which is very interesting. The answer to the straight answer to your question is that yes, I think we can. I think we can, because I don't think you can go back in time. I do not believe that you can go back in time. Paul Biya was not there when Southern Cameroon was annexed, and neither were you or I. We don't know that country. I hear a lot of romanticizing that people do about what Southern Cameroon or West Cameroon was like. This was a very, very elite state. A lot of the difficulties we have today came from the fact that we had this, we adopted this British system with an elite. I remember my parents worked for CDC, and you had senior service quarters, you had junior service quarters, you had the workers' quarters, which were slaves, which were slave quarters, and which today, I mean, when we look at the CDC today, that was Southern Cameroon. You look at those slave quarters that exist today, that was Southern Cameroon. So we should not romanticize and act as if we had some kind of perfect heaven that has only been destroyed by joining with the Francophone side. We had many functional things. We had things that worked, absolutely. We had our power cam, we had water facilities, we had functional companies, and so on and so forth. But it was far from heaven. Come on. We were an African state that had been colonized. I mean, people should know where this thing is coming from, of turning into the British into heroes. They were not heroes, they were colonizers. And colonizers do what all colonizers do, which is to exploit the people who live in in the countries that they have colonized. That is what we were left with. So do I want to go back to that before I discuss a unity with Francophones? No. Has there been oppression and marginalization by the regimes of Ahidjo and Biya against the Anglophone people? Yes, there has been oppression. There has been that oppression. We can talk about it. We can determine what it is. We can determine how we want to go forward, and we can build a united Cameroon. And yes, I say 10 states, because the other thing where I think that Anglophones are lying to themselves is to believe that because Northwest and Southwest were able to form a common front in the last 3 years, that if they are, you have 2 states tomorrow, you will not have the divide between Northwest and Southwest. That is an illusion. That is a complete illusion, because the simple numbers create a minority. I happen to be somebody whose mother is from the Southwest and whose father is from the Northwest. The numbers between the Southwest and the Northwest create the exact same situation that the Anglophone part of Cameroon has with the Francophone part of Cameroon. That means that the Southwest will be 20% of the country, numerically speaking, with large numbers of Northwesterners living in their part of the country. And believe you me, as soon as you remove the common enemy, which is the Francophone, you will have to face that divide. And that divide is a reality. And that is why I believe in a 10-state federation, because I think that we have to take into account our history as a whole, take into account our identity as a whole, give autonomy to the regions. When we talk about federation, it's about money and it is about power. How much money are you allowing the states to keep for themselves so that they can define development for themselves and go forward? And how much money are you keeping at the central level? And how much power are you giving them to make decisions about their own lives? I am sorry, I am upsetting people of this program. I do not want to go back to a two-state federation. I want to act that I have been discriminated against as an Anglophone, and that large numbers of Anglophones have been discriminated against. And I want to take that information and define for myself of the British or Anglophone British culture. I want to build something new for myself as an African. I don't want to go back in time and become the somebody who is just living colonization. There is nothing. We should stop with this romanticizing about a colonizer, please. An African in 2020. What should I love about the British? I love nothing about them. They came here, they colonized me, and they may have done it in a different way from the French, but they are colonizers and exploiters. I don't want to keep their identity. I'm sorry.
Okay. Mr. Chofo, I know that this wasn't meant to be a debate, so we would. I'm sure the producers of Daily TV want to organize a discussion where we can go into all these things and this, because it's more educative for us. I mean, as I listened to the rationale for that, I also am learning, and I think that many people like Cho Claudia, who said that's where she disagrees with Kawala on 10 states, means that she accepts what she says about federation, but she disagrees. I think people learn and we evolve, and I think that is the one thing that we need to take from this, is that we learn and evolve and we move on. And as much as we want to, my take home today is that Madam Kawala does acknowledge all the issues that are inherent in the fight by the British. She just disagrees with what the projected outcomes are meant to be. And
yes.
Another take home is, which again clarifies a lot of things for the people from the CRM, is that Kawala has actually been in coalition with the CRM for a while. And so the fact that the CRM became popular recently doesn't mean that automatically there is someone. And if we start talking about leading, and we are basically losing the focus, the issue should be about what goals they can come as separate entities into a common fight for the liberation of Cameroon. And I think if we take that message home today, everyone who has listened, I've seen some messages that were very hurtful. I didn't bring them up on the screen, so you basically wasted your time and resource, because you could have contributed to the discussion. I think that anyone who came here with an open mind had something to learn today, and I want to thank you so much for taking that time. I didn't tell you that we're going to go over 2 hours. Maybe if you knew that, you probably have said no. But here we are, 2 hours, 40-something minutes of your time at the heart of Women's Day. I didn't even get you to tell us about political transition, what exactly it means, but I think somehow it was interspersed in your discussion. You did say that. So, but I would want you to, give one last word to, especially to the women out there, like take it as a moment to address women on Women's Day.
Okay. I would like to say to the women, that we here as women on the ground in Cameroon, we have taken the lead. We have stepped in front. We have started a movement called Mothers of the Nation that has been growing. And on this Mother's Day, we came together across party lines, across association lines, and so on, to say we as women have to stand up and say stop, absolute stop to the violence in our country. We are taking a first step. We want you to join us in that first step. So first of all, tomorrow we want you to be in black. Please be in black and make a statement. That black is a black of mourning. It is a black of solidarity. It is a black that shows strength, our strength as black women that we are. We are out to bring an end to this violence and this death in our country. And we are out to say yes to life. We must have life. So join us tomorrow in black, but get in touch with us, Stand Up for Cameroon, through Facebook, through Twitter. Get in touch with us and join the movement, because we know that what we are facing is a very, very difficult fight. We've been fighting it for some time, but we are gaining momentum. We need you to join us and for us to take the last stretch of the fight to the end, and for us to get into a political transition for Cameroon. Thank you.
And then, ladies and gentlemen, we have, after pushing our boundaries and pushing our luck, we have kept Madam Kawala for over 2 hours and 45 minutes of what has been very engaging and very educative. I was learning, and you would have noticed, I went through doing some research, looking at stuff. There's a lot of there are a lot of resources out there. The talks she's given at international fora, be it on TED, be it or in the USA, be it, these are resources that are there where we can, I mean, she's talking to a foreign audience. And when I started, I deliberately wanted to list some of the awards that she has received over the years. And all of them, if you notice, came on the issues of leadership, management, and her work with women and the youth. I think it's we are losing out on something when we keep slinging mud. Let us take this as an opportunity to learn and to grow and to work towards collaborating and liberating Cameroon. I think politics will come when Cameroon is a free country. And I think if we had the opportunity to hear about political transition, I did read a bit on it, you would have heard that it is not really about giving power to any party. It's about creating the conditions where we can have free and fair elections, where we can have an electoral system that is not cloaked, tied to a particular regime. And we can actually have a system which deals with the crisis in the Northwest and Southwest, and we don't have people boycotting elections. So I think that would summarize it for today. I want to thank you also very much for joining us, and the Daily TV audience out there who have been on Facing the Facts. You've heard for yourself. You've been engaging as usual. And I want to say that next Saturday, it will be something unique because Pamela Bonkiyong will be hosting something very, very unique. You don't want to miss it out. Save this. And just so you know, today we are broadcasting live on Facebook and at the same time on YouTube. It was going concurrently on the 2 platforms. So you can also subscribe to the Daily TV YouTube channel, and you can also follow the page, and you can, use that bell button so that you get notifications on when this is coming up. I've been your host today, and I thank you so much for your time and attention. God bless and enjoy the rest of your weekend. And happy Women's Day to all the women and mothers out there. And I started with my black. If you're in Cameroon, you heard Madame Kawala come out in black so that we can use it as an opportunity to highlight the distress that our country is facing. Thank you and God bless.